Hey, welcome back to the Backyard Professor Chess videos. I'm out here in my backyard, out in a nice quiet morning, out among the sagebrush actually. Let's do one more King's Indian because this opening is so important. It gives us a chance to practice, to see the masters and grandmasters playing, what the basic strategies are, some of the tactics, some of the main overall themes of the game. Really important to understand the themes in the openings. Not necessarily the memorized lines, because the moment your opponent doesn't move the right line, the right move in the memorized line, you're on your own. You can't just keep playing the memorized lines. You have to address the needs of the board. So understanding themes in openings are much more important than understanding the specific moves. This game is by a man named Pugh and Weera Montree. This is in Weera Montree's The Best Lessons of a Chess Coach, a wonderful book where he explains each and every move, the idea behind each move and all. It's a great book. I need to study it more. I played through several of the games, but I need to sit down and just read and study and absorb it better than I have. G6, a typical King's Indian. He's going to fianchetto the bishop, of course. This is a queen-pawn opening with the knight coming up, which is the main way to open against the King Indian if you're playing white. Now, there's a couple different options here for white at this point in the game. He can present the e-pawn, continuing to hit the center. We've seen where they come up here and they have that line of pawns, correct? His opponent does a different opening here. He goes to the g3. He's going to fianchetto his bishop and have the long diagonal across the board, right? Weera Montree castles, and now he fianchettos the bishop so that he has this long diagonal. So this is a little bit different than the other king pawn openings or the King Indian defenses we've seen from the white pieces where he doesn't have the three pawns yet. He's not going to do a strong pawn center yet. And now he brings up his knight, knight f3. So he's bringing in more pieces than pawns at this point. This gives black the signal to continue bringing out his pieces as well. And now he wants to castle. You want to castle in the King's Indian. You know, there are some games where we have trouble castling, but in the King's Indian defense, really, truly, both players want to castle fairly early, tuck your king away, because the influence from the pieces across the center is going to mean the fight is in the center. And by placing pawns in the center, you're going to either break that baby open or close it down, which means, of course, you're going to jump to one of the wings. And if you jump to the king's side wing, you better have your king tucked away. That's, you know, that's a basic philosophy. Now look at Weera Montree. He comes right up here to bishop g4. What this move is doing, and I've said this in other videos, it's important to repeat it so that we see this as a possible strategy. He wants to take this knight. He's going to get rid of it. When an opponent does this to you, realistically, you've lost this knight. What that means is Weera Montree, as the player with the black pieces, is going to want the dark squares in the center, because this knight is influencing d4 and e5, the two dark squares, right? Well, interestingly, this bishop taking that knight gives the black player more strength with his knight against those dark squares in the center. That's what that's doing, right? So he's contesting. So what's his opponent do? He wastes a move. Now this is important to understand. This is kind of a cool little mini lesson that Weera Montree gives us. He goes ahead and pushes the h3. That's a complete waste of time. He's going to take the knight. You're better off either pushing your central pawn or bringing up your bishop. You're better off strengthening your center than wasting your time making sure that he does what he's going to do anyway, right? That's what Weera Montree said. And he said, I'm going to take the knight anyway. So he had a better way to respond to that than wasting his time here. and then the bishop will respond and takes f3. So now we see that the strength of the black pieces over the central dark squares is now better. You see how that works? This bishop has not affected those dark squares that black is contesting. And now black's got this e5 push on the pawn to come up if he so chooses. But before he does, he brings his knight over here to d7. And now he does come up to e3. He is giving support for his d4 pawn. And of course, that's when you push the e5 pawn. Because now the fight is for those central dark squares. He's going to try to take over those dark squares. Knight comes over here to e2, which again gives him support of the central dark square. So he knows now that he's got to fight for those central dark squares. It's interesting how they fight for squares as well as position, as well as for material. But part of the game is making sure you don't lose some powerful squares, right? Now, of course, the pawns are pointing to the king's side. So that's the play that black's going to do. And one of the very best ways to take on a kingside attack is to push the pawns. Use the pawns as the battering rams, as the means to opening up files so that you can activate your rooks. This is a main theme in all of chess games. When you're going to play on a wing, the best way is push that f5 pawn, absolutely. Now, rather than just reacting, Pugh is going to have a plan of his own. He can't just simply react to every move that Weeramontre does. If you play that way, you end up playing losing chess. I speak from vast experience, as does everyone else. You know that's how it works. So he's going to push the queen side. He's trying to get counterplay on the queen side. And this is proper chess play. Weeramontre puts the pressure even further now. You notice, because he got control of the e5 by pushing the e5, Pugh did not exchange the pawns. Now he gets more space. He puts the question to the bishop. He cramps the king side of white. He's unnecessarily weakened his king side with these pawn moves. So that's the signal to just keep pressuring the king side, right? And now d takes c5. He's going to take the pawn there. Queen comes to b3 on the queen side. He's got him not really disrupted, though, putting check to the king. The king, of course, simply moves out of check, king h8. But now he can disrupt the queen pawn, the queenside pawn. So you notice how Weeramontre has made weaknesses based on his play on Pugh's king side. Now Pugh is coming over here and creating weaknesses on Weeramontre's queen side. They're both going to attack each other. Now he's got to babysit this pawn here. That's the weakness. This pawn here is weak. The whole queen side is shattered with that move. So this is going to make very interesting battle, isn't it? Knight comes up to b4. Queen comes back down to b5, pressuring the knight somewhat. Rook is going to come to b8. Now, and you're saying, okay, wait a minute. You just said you don't want to react to all your opponent's threats. Weeramontre is not reacting to his opponent's threats. Look at what is happening here. He is giving his queen side enough support that it doesn't get destroyed totally. Pugh isn't going to dominate his queen side. In fact, now he's the one putting the threats to the queen. It's only a one-piece attack on the queen side. A one-piece attack normally doesn't win. It usually can't win, right? His king side is taken care of. He's aware he's got dominion on the king side. So he's going to take care of his queenside. He's not necessarily reacting. He's just making sure things don't get out of hand, right? Or is he? Knight D3. Look at that phenomenal knight outpost. Because he took care of his queenside, now he's got the most powerful piece on the board. On the 6th rank, that's where the knights have the maximum effect and power. Look how it completely dominates White's board. That is sensational. Queen drops down to C2. And now, again, Queen to E7. The idea here is he's developing all of his army. He's connected his rooks now by moving his queen up. His queen comes to here. She still has influence into the king side. She's keeping an eye on the weak pawn on that side. That pawn is pretty well supported by 3 major pieces, right? So it's a target, but it's not a target that Pugh is going to get anytime soon. It's not going to disrupt the queen side. This is domination. You're going to play where your strength is, right? That's what he's doing. Pugh brings up A3. Rook F comes over to C. Now he looks like he's going for the queen side, doesn't he? Because the queen side has weaknesses. This backward B pawn, he's got to watch. This center is somewhat locked, kind of. It's openable. In fact, that is what he's starting to do. He said, I'm going to open this because I've got such a powerful, long, influential bishop, and my knight is absolutely dominating, and there's no way to get rid of the knight at this point. So knight takes D4. You can see how he's just disrupted. He can't get his bishop out here to coordinate his rooks. His rooks aren't on open files. Weeramontri's rook is on an open file, pressuring the backward pawn, the weaknesses. This is a tough go, man. And he's going to continue pressuring the weaknesses. If you have targets, if you have weaknesses, what look like a king side, Weeramontri has now found a way to go into the queen side and dominate the queen side board. Isn't that fascinating? Knight pops back down to E2, and he keeps right on pushing that C pawn. Now, at this point, you just have to say, I've been outplayed. That knight's not going anywhere, and it's going to completely influence the entire game, the rest of the game. So this is a tough call that he's in. Because he pushed the pawn, however, he does give him back the D4 square, but he's not worried about that. He really isn't worried about that. Because now, no, he comes to C5. Now he's got his other knight that can replace that knight if he ever gets taken. And bishop comes up to D2. He's finally trying to get his rooks connected, but there's not a lot for him to do, really. And now look at this. Knight B3. Shazam! As Gomer Pyle used to say. I'm giving my age away, aren't I? Wow, that's just total domination on the queen side with the powerful outposts of both knights. That is an incredible view. That's one of the coolest positions. That is if you're the black player, the black pieces player. And bishop comes up to C3, trying to give support to his knight. And of course, knight is going to take. Bishop comes to C3. Knight takes the knight at D4. He's going to start whittling him down, is what he's doing. And then it is supported with the pawn, E4. But that's not enough to get him, because now the queen can come in, keeping her eye on the center, keeping her eye on the king side. You've got two really powerful rooks with an exceptionally strong pawn down there. Yowza. Queen D2, trying to do as much defense as he can. And now his own bishop takes D4. That fine fianchettoed bishop finally uses its influence to finally eliminate the last supporting remnants of Pugh's center. This is exceptionally excellent chess. And then queen comes down here to, no, queen comes up here to e3, which is a great move for trying to keep his control of the center somewhat mildly, but it's too little too late, because now, see, Weeramonte, because he was able to activate his rooks early, because he was able to get the open files, certainly has the power of the files, and Pugh has none of them. That's essentially, besides the fact that he has the vastly superior minor piece, it's the rooks on the open files that give Weeramonte his total domination, isn't it? That's interesting, isn't it? G4, he's going to try to break up the pawn chain. Rook comes zipping down here to B3, putting immense pressure on the queen side. Again, where the knight was, now you replace it with the rook, because that outpost is so powerful. It's just, this is sensational to see this. G takes F5. He's going to try to break through, but it's too little too late. Rook takes C3. And this game is, for all intents and purposes, over. Queen does take E4. And now rook goes to C2. And it's there that Pugh resigned. He's just had enough. There's too much power and domination here. His next move, he's going to bring his bishop down to here. He's going to open up his queen. That's a powerful game. So there's your chess-a-size for the day. Have fun studying the openings, but don't worry about memorizing all kinds of specific lines. You want the main themes, not the memorized lines. So that should help us in our openings. So the next opening I'm going to look at is the King's Gambit. I know there's several of you who've talked to me about the King's Gambit in the comments. I'll do a few games on the King's Gambit and try to show you the basis of the King's Gambit, which leads to the Evans Gambit, which is another really fascinating gambit to play, all right? So anyway, have fun, study hard, do well, be good, have a great life, and I will see you in the next chess video.